In many cases, then what you're seeing when somebody maybe has run Sloop or try Sloop and they're not seeing an effect from it, you start to deconstruct things is to say, hey, maybe it's not the right time. So maybe the conditions have not been set to achieve
Mm.
success. And then two, maybe we have a low quality source. And then three, there is then individual dose dependency where depending on how a person's response factors are, they could just naturally, based on how they're put together and how their cells work, it could be they might need more. So I mean, that's the thing I've noticed. Without the level of precision that you deploy to make sure the environment's right, I've just noticed even as we get persons set up and we're making the changes that would help put us in a spot where we could benefit from SLU, even then I notice for some people, like there's this point where they're not really feeling it, and then we get over that point and then they immediately feel it. Like for me, 250 micrograms, typically I won't have as much of a perception of it, but as soon as I hit 500 micrograms, I like 15 minutes later, 20 minutes later, I'm sweating,
Yeah.
I'm feeling it, and it's like I can tell when I'm running Sloop and when it's firing in my system, I can just feel it. I mean, it's like 100%. So
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And through my lens, when I'm working with people and we start on a low dose, I've got kind of these checkpoints. So I'm thinking about these 10 primary pathways. And is there a bottleneck in one of those pathways? And if there is, then that kind of directs what interventions we do as far as what we want to make sure is supported and what we potentially add in. Going up in dose is absolutely an option, but I just like to make sure those things are covered. And then I've also got kind of that series of objective and subjective markers that I'm going to be looking at. Objectively, we can look at things like fasting glucose. We can look at lipid profiles. You can measure things like VO2 max to some degree, but I prefer, and you can look at like on an in-body, you can look for decrease in body fat, visceral fat, those kind of things. Those are going to be some simple objective markers. There's a lot more detailed ones if somebody really wants to go all out and test
do all the
everything.
testing. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can go absolutely hog wild and crazy if you have the resources and the patience to want to test. You can test so much. And then I think too, the other piece I like to make the point on with SLU for me is that oftentimes I am running this in conjunction with something else, and
Sure.
we've talked about earlier the idea of a star player, support players, synergistic players. It's like you don't have a team full of like, point guards or whatever, right? There's like different roles on teams. And so I think a common pairing that you see this with is with something like a Retta or something with a TERS, with a GLP. And that's where I think, when the stage is set, it can be a really powerful add-on to a person who is on a GLP-1. That's how I have utilized it a lot and how I've really found a lot of benefit from this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So GLP-1s are going to also help with AMPK activation, and SLU pairs great with it. But I always caution people, we don't want to do too much AMPK. An example of that are those people that are taking metformin, rapamycin, and everything they can to slow cell aging down. Muscle's the currency of aging. Then they can't build muscle; they lose muscle, and they're like, can't figure it out. I'm biohacking myself. I'm on all these AMPK activators, but that's why I really like the retatrutide. I think that's a smart move.